Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it. Michael, a 45-year-old surgeon, was recently appointed to the position of chief medical officer at a private practice. He loved his work and wanted to practice more, but he accepted his new position and took it with all responsibility. Under his careful guidance, everything in the clinic has returned to normal. Work capacity increased. Drunken duty at night and senseless romances between doctors and nurses stopped. But despite professional success in his personal life, Michael did not do well. He used to be a happy family man with a beautiful wife, Adriana, who once fell madly in love with a promising doctor and bragged about it to all girlfriends. Father, a remember of a daughter, Betty. Now he was divorced and rarely saw his family. His wife ran away to a rich millionaire who owned a chain of shopping centers and could afford to satisfy any whim of Adriana. And she loved affluence and attention, unlike her ex-husband. It took her and his stepdaughter to foreign countries, arranged dinner parties, and provided a luxurious life. Michael's ex-wife has always dreamed of such a relationship, and her husband surgeon slept at work and could snap from dinner to an unscheduled operation in the hospital, which, as she thought, she was dearer to him than his family. Michael remained a bachelor. His favorite pet Labrador kept him company. He named him Hamlet, and in his spare time did not neglect walks with the dog in the park, where he played with him and ran around like a child. Hamlet always saw him off to work with sadness in his dark eyes and greeted him with joyful barking and tail flickering. The successful Michael also had his detractors. They did not openly demonstrate their envy and dislike, but quietly rejoiced at his failures and divorce from his wife. These people could not harm him in any way, and were not capable of open displays of aggression. One day, a 37-year-old Kathy woman was admitted to the clinic with severe injuries sustained in a major accident in the city center. After the operation, which lasted more than 1 hour, she fell into a coma and did not regain consciousness for a long time. When Kathy finally woke up, it turned out that she had speech problems. She was only making sounds and was unable to communicate fully. The doctors attributed it to the consequences of the head injury. She couldn't move around on her own either. She was always lying down and moaning with helplessness, and could move only one arm. But Michael promised her that after rehabilitation, the woman will definitely get better. "Don't worry, we will take care of you," the head doctor assured her. But he saw the sadness in the silent patient's eyes. Kathy was visited by only one man, who introduced himself as her husband. Ethan had a fluttering heart for every nurse intern he had ever interacted with. No one could believe that such a handsome man with a fashionable haircut, kill clothes, who looked about 8 years younger than the patient, could be her husband. Besides, he loved and cared for her so much that everyone envied the woman. "Honey, it's that time again. I can't be at home knowing that you are here suffering alone," he said, kissing his wife and putting in a vase brought a lush bouquet of roses. "How are you here? What did the doctors say?" He asked her sympathetically and settled on the edge of the bed, stroking her hair. Kathy could not answer him, just nodded or shook her head. From her reaction, it was impossible to tell that she was pleased with the visits of her young obliging spouse. Michael even noticed that when he appeared, the woman squirmed in her bed, her eyes troubled and anxious. Without knowing why, he began to observe the strange couple. He asked the staff if they knew what they were talking about in the ward, but they knew nothing and saw nothing in their visits. If in nothing suspicious. A week later, a pretty nurse in her 30s stood in Michael's office, but she was different from his previous female coworkers. Her eyes didn't run with fear. Her back was straight, a look of confidence. "Well," said the head doctor, looking over the new employee's resume, "you have an excellent recommendation in education. I see no reason to refuse. So congratulations, you've been hired. You start tomorrow. Go to the head nurse on the first floor and she'll put you on a schedule." "Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be working with you." The "Hear you're a great surgeon, but keep up the good work," said Christina and left the office. Michael was glad to have such an employee because they were always short of nurses, especially the smart ones. And this woman was a godsend. A week passed. Michael had no complaints about Christina. She knew her job, was not late, managed to manage all the procedures, made the necessary marks in the logs, and was nice to the patients. Only with her colleagues she kept aloof, did not talk much about herself, did not ask about others, as if she only cared about her work, but not about building friendships. However, it was enough for him, and so the chief physician did not pry Christina in the soul. After all, he did not like such curiosity. Maybe it will reveal itself in time. But there was another oddity in the behavior of the new girl. She in a short time made friends with Kathy, who did not like frequent visits. She was pleasant to her, this lonely, silent patient. The nurse cared for her with kindness, with personal care, constantly hanging around to adjust her pillow or inquire about her well-being. It was all right and part of the nurse's job description. But one day, Michael noticed tears in Kathy's eyes, after Christina had left her. So he decided to talk to the patient himself and see if there was any problem or tension with the nursing staff. "Kathy, I'd like to ask you a few questions. And if your answer is yes, blink twice, and if your answer is no, one okay." But contrary to expectation, she shook her head and lowered her eyes. "I'm not your enemy. I want to help you because I can see that something's weighing on you. It's Christina, the nurse, who comes to see you." But Kathy didn't want to answer, not paying the man the slightest attention. All of this did not please Michael, but he did not insist. He was concerned that after talking to the nurse, their problematic patient was upset. In addition, Christina's visits in a day reached about 5 or 6 times, and that was already suggestive. Michael realized he would have to take other measures, and during the lunch break he left the clinic and went to a hardware store to buy a surveillance camera. In the evening, when Christina had gone home and Kathy was found sleeping peacefully, he snuck into her room and secured the camera near the vent so that it would be inconspicuous. The next morning, once he was in his office, Michael checked his laptop first thing, hoping to see a recording of Christina and Kathy's meeting. What appeared before his eyes stunned the doctor. The nurse was pacing restlessly around the patient's room and at times threateningly loomed over her. "Well, all lying down. Well, lie down. Lie down if you are afraid to meet outside the hospital. You can even lie here for years. Just remember, we have your son. I have a lot of patience." Christina hissed. "You gotta jog your memory and remember the safety deposit box number. Otherwise, William's gonna be in trouble. Every day he cries and remembers a mommy who doesn't care about him. And remember, Mammy, no living soul can find out about our conversation you tell anyone. Your son's dead. Got it. And I'm gonna put a syringe of air in your vein. You realize I'm in control. No one can help you," threatened the wily nurse with a nightingale voice, and slit the woman's neck, signaling her imminent demise. Michael even froze and breathed less. How could it be possible that his hospital was under his nose? The blackmailer was threatening an unstable patient with death and blackmailing his son's life. He would never allow this to happen and would do everything he could to ensure that this two-faced scoundrel was arrested and punished to the fullest extent of the law. Very often, Michael was glad that he chose the profession of a surgeon, which provided good connections and relations with many influential people. He had a debtor in the police who was dealing with complicated cases. He called him and asked for a meeting, and at the same time took a flash drive with a camera recording to show Christina's intentions right away. Was your clinic lucky to have such a head doctor? The friend shook Michael's hand gratefully. "You will do this woman a great favor. I've already given the data on Christina to my guys. They should call and tell me if she's in the database." It turned out that Christina was a known fraudster who had already been on the police radar several times, but always escaped justice. But this time she was put under surveillance and found out that the woman had been in a romantic relationship with Ethan's husband Kathy for a long time. She was apprehended and taken to the station for questioning. When videotaped from the ward, she became confused and immediately turned in her lover's accomplice to save her own skin. Christina told all. It turned out Kathy was a wealthy heiress and owner of a large business. A few years ago, her first husband died in a car accident. So she and 7-year-old William were left alone. For 2 years, she had been a widow on her own, raising her son and handling the affairs of the company. And then Ethan showed up. He was not intrusive because he had learned everything about her character and habits in advance and became what she saw as an ideal man. He fought for her attention for a long time, and finally Kathy gave in. She fell in love with him. The couple got married. And now it turns out it wasn't for love. Ethan had gained the trust of his wife to the point where he knew her passwords to the safe deposit box and safe deposit box. Nothing else prevented him from getting out of the way of his wife, only she gave in to the call of the sixth sense. Just recently changed all the passwords, and her spouse could not get close to his wife's funds. She herself survived the accident that Ethan and Christina had set up by disabling the brakes on her car. Only the crooks were left holding the bag because Kathy restricted her spouse's access to her money. But the poor patient's suffering did not end there. Ruthless criminals did not leave her alone and kidnapped her son, blackmailing his life. For this, Christina took a job at the clinic. Several times a day, she organized psychological bullying Kathy, promising to destroy both her and the boy if she did not stop being stubborn. But this time, Kathy didn't just give up. All this time, she wasn't mute. She was just pretending to be to buy time. She couldn't go to the police because she was afraid for William, and she spent every day fearing for his life, not knowing who to turn to. Ethan was arrested that same night and charged with attempted murder, child abduction, blackmail, and fraud. When he was shown the tape of Adriana's confession, he immediately gave up and blamed it all on his mistress. She's the snake who made the whole thing up. Did you see the way she handled my wife at the hospital? Yeah, a real psychopath. I'm a victim, too. I've never been involved in anything like this before. She made me do it. I swear I babbled. When he realized he couldn't get away with it, the investigator replied. The crooks told us where they'd been hiding William all this time. And after he was examined and fed, Michael took him to the hospital to see his mom. Mommy, cried her son and rushed to her. My sunshine, you are safe. She began kissing the boy and examining him for beatings. But William was perfectly healthy. What have they done to you? I was so scared without you, he cried, hugging his mother's neck. Michael gave them some time alone together, but then he came back. Thank you so much. I was told you were the one who set up the camera in the room and nailed the bastard, said the patient, taking his hand. I won't forget that. You always come to me with any request. I'll never say no. Do you have any other relatives in town? If you want, I can take William to my place for a while. I live alone, but I have experience with children. I have a teenage daughter. I have a dog, and they'll have fun. And I can bring the boy to you every day. You don't mind, do you? Of course not. Otherwise, I'd just hand him over to the child welfare authorities. From that day on, William lived with Michael. They spent all their free time together. Hamlet would even ride the little guest on his back. Sometimes they got so tired that they fell asleep on the floor in each other's arms. Knowing that all her problems were behind her, Kathy was on the mend. Michael and William visited her daily and talked a lot. Michael liked the patient, and she liked him too. No matter how hard Ethan tried, she didn't see any genuine concern from him. Michael, on the other hand, was completely different. After the discharge, he invited Kathy and William to his house for dinner. When the boy fell asleep with Hamlet again, they had a long talk about their feelings and decided to start dating. For the first time, Michael clung to his bachelor pad, but then he gave in and moved with Hamlet into his sweetheart's spacious home. Wodum was very happy because soon he would have a real official daddy.